Having seen The Rise of Skywalker a second time, I can definitely say it allowed me to appreciate the movie even more, along at the same time making the stuff I either felt about or just plain didn't like stick out even more too. It's like a give and take situation of this movie. There's gonna be stuff you're gonna like even more and other stuff you're gonna be like, what? So in this video, I'm gonna go over the good, the bad, and the ugly of Rise of Skywalker. Or at least what I personally thought was that. So remember to keep that in mind, as all of this is strictly my opinion, as I know some stuff I liked, others didn't, and vice versa. And it also goes without saying that yes, this will be a very spoiler-heavy review, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, then you're gonna want to check back on this video later once you do. With that out of the way, let's start with what I thought was good in Rise of Skywalker. First, it's the comedy. After how The Last Jedi was riddled so much with Marvel-esque humor type of comedy, whatever you want to call it, it was such a breath of fresh air to get real Star Wars comedy again on the big screen. The banter between Poe and Finn was fun, but C-3PO definitely takes the cake here, especially his back and forth with Poe. What can I say? It was great, and it definitely felt like Star Wars humor. I know some people may not like the idea of Rey's lineage, and that's fair. I can understand their arguments against it, sure. However, as someone who literally called it that she was a Palpatine since before The Last Jedi even came out, I'm obviously very happy with the decision they took. I mean, my Rey Palpatine video is still my most famous video to date, having 1 million views and the #1 Rey Palpatine theory video on YouTube as a whole. So yeah, you bet I liked Rey's lineage here. It makes so much sense when you look at all the little clues in Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, and it actually gives us a good explanation for her godlike power. Lando. Man, what can I say? One of my all-time favorite characters from Star Wars, and he was so good here. Especially the scene on Exigua where he arrives with all the civilian ships. Oh, that gave me goosebumps just to see and hear him on the Falcon again. Not to mention, Billy Dee still plays an amazing Lando even at 82 years of age. Now, I wasn't too crazy about the Force bond in The Last Jedi, but it was seriously cool and well done in The Rise of Skywalker. Just to see that Rey and Kylo could still lightsaber duel without even being in the same room was insane and made for some great visuals. Luke was done pretty well here too, or at least as good as he could as a Force Ghost. The scene of him raising the X-Wing on Ahch-To also made me cry, I'm not gonna lie. It was beautiful, and yeah, don't get me started on that flashback of younger Luke training Leia to be a Jedi. As an OT fanboy, that scene caught me completely by surprise, but I loved every second of it. And it makes so much sense too. Of course Luke would have Leia be his very first Jedi Padawan. I only wish we could have seen more of that, but I'm very happy with what we got. The planet of Exigua looked awesome, and after seeing how bland the planets in the sequel trilogy have been thus far, it made Exigua such a welcomed surprise addition. It had such a moody, evil, dark atmosphere and was unique in general. I also especially liked how Palpatine's Sith Temple also looked like a stacked triangular pyramid in the same vein that the Mortis monolith did. I'd like to think it's a nice little throwback to Mortis, even though I don't think it was intentional, but hey. I know some people hated the idea of Hux betraying Kylo, which I don't get, as I was all for it. I mean, he never liked him anyway, and seeing Kylo take command of the First Order had to seriously piss him off. So think about it, what better way than to try and help the Resistance in foiling Kylo's plans and making him look bad? I dug it. The lightsaber fights in Rise of Skywalker were just something else. We got a lot of that here, and for once in the sequel trilogy, they looked good. The lightsaber fight in Force Awakens was super scrappy and not very enjoyable for me, but Rise of Skywalker improved so much over that, especially with the duel on the Death Star ruins. I even at one point liked how Kylo actually used his crossguard to save him from an attack by Rey too, as we never really see him use it before. Thanks to The Rise of Skywalker, it's now helped me appreciate and actually like the main cast of characters. I'm fine with Rey and Finn now, and while I already liked Poe in The Last Jedi, he's now easily become my favorite of the light side characters in the sequel trilogy. As for Kylo, well, I'll admit it, I thought he was a dumb emo punk in The Force Awakens. He improved a bit in The Last Jedi, but boy, Adam Driver's performance in The Rise of Skywalker is just amazing. He stole every scene he was in as the Supreme Leader, especially the opening that had him crushing those Vader loyalists with his troops backing him up was just awesome. I can now say that Kylo is officially my favorite Darksider character in Star Wars. And even though I wasn't a fan of how he went back to being Ben Solo, at the very least, Driver's amazing acting still made his performance enjoyable for me. Now, as for the bad in the movie, I've only got a couple of things. First is Zori Bliss's comment about Poe leaving Spice Running to go join the Resistance, which was pretty bad. As we know in canon, he actually joined the New Republic Navy first, and then later left that to join the Resistance. Clearly, the Lucasfilm story group either didn't bother to correct JJ about this in the script, or JJ just flat out ignored them. The same also very much applies to the "they fly now" scene on Basana, which in canon doesn't make any sense as Poe has seen First Order jet troopers before in the comics. But hey, I guess JJ doesn't care about that and no one really wanted to tell him otherwise. The overhyped Knights of Ren and the Sith Troopers in general were pretty lame here. We got minimal scenes for each of them and overall they weren't very impressive. I really would had at least liked a scene of Kylo interacting with the Knights, which I imagine there probably is one but was left on the cutting room floor, as JJ was trying so hard to avoid having the movie be 3 hours long, which again, that wouldn't have been a problem for me. Is it just me or did Maz Kanata feel really tacked on here? She felt so useless and was pretty much there just to give exposition and narrate what Leia is thinking or doing. I get why they have her there, but it just didn't work for me. Also, why is Maz out of all people giving Chewie a medal at the end? Like, on what authority can she do that? It just felt blah for me. Speaking about the end scenes, but that Lando and Janna conversation at the end was really awkward. Some people I spoke to understood it as Lando wanting to help her find her parents, which yeah, makes sense I guess, but others also saw it as Lando flirting and wanting to sleep with her, which is just disturbing considering according to the visual dictionary, Janna is actually his long-lost daughter. So it goes without saying that writing there was pretty bad. I'm really torn about the Wedge cameo. At first I loved it when Wedge popped up on the screen for those couple of seconds. So much so that I literally yelled, "It's Wedge!" in my theater and people around me were like, "Who's that?" I got a little too excited for my own good there, I know. But on my second viewing, the Wedge cameo kind of lost that coolness factor for me for whatever reason. And that might have been because Wedge had a British accent for I don't know why. That's just super weird, as we can see in both Rebels and the original trilogy, Wedge always had more of an American accent. And while I know the actor Dennis Lawson is from the UK, it just seemed like he forgot that Wedge didn't have a British accent and used his own natural accent, with surprisingly JJ and no one else on set correcting him about that. So hearing Wedge with a British accent kind of broke my immersion there for a second. Alright, now to talk about the things I hated about The Rise of Skywalker, and there's quite a bit here. First is the pacing of the movie, as I said in my non-spoiler review. Rise of Skywalker seriously should have been at the very least 3 hours long. Otherwise, it just feels far too rushed in a lot of parts. Leia randomly dying was weird too. In my first viewing, I didn't catch the explanation that said that she used all her strength to contact Kylo. So the whole time I was super confused on why she randomly died without any explanation at all. Then in my second viewing, I heard the explanation, but I still didn't like it. It's in my opinion a lazy way to send her off like that, and they could have done better. Ben Solo. Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of him ending Kylo and reverting back to Ben. I know a lot of people were, but I wasn't. I guess it's because I liked Kylo so much, so when he threw the lightsaber into the water, at that point the movie lost a little steam for me. And you know what? I think I would have liked Ben more if he wasn't such a dum-dum. Like, I get the symbolism of him throwing the saber into the water as that's like him ending Kylo, but at the same time, couldn't he had waited until after killing Palpatine to do that? Like, how dumb do you have to be to go to Exigua to face off against one of the strongest Sith Lords in history with only a blaster in hand? And don't tell me that Ben knew that Rey would transfer him a lightsaber through the Force, as she never would have done that if she didn't have Leia's saber, which Ben didn't know she had. And in general, Ben didn't even know she would be there. Also, if at that point Ben is so bent on killing Palpatine at all costs, then why not bring an enormous First Order fleet to Exegol to back him up? I mean, he's the Supreme Leader, for crying out loud, make use of those powers. Also, while on the topic of the First Order, what gives of all those First Order Star Destroyers randomly blowing up at the end of the movie? Everyone is still at Exegol fighting the Sith fleet, so it makes no sense to see the First Order fleet just die off like that. Unless Ben Solo commanded everyone to do that off-screen before he left the Exegol, then okay, but even then, that's something too big and important to leave off-screen. Not to mention too incredibly dumb for the First Order to even accept and do anyways. Lastly, what's up with Rey's custom lightsaber? Sure, it looks awesome and it's great to see she finally built her own, but when does she exactly do this? If she's had this lightsaber the entire time, then why couldn't she had used it? I mean, let's be honest, it would have been so much cooler to see Rey wield her yellow lightsaber throughout the movie. Instead, we only see it at the very end without any explanation on when she built it, or better yet, where she found a kyber crystal to activate it. Yeah, I know, it makes for a cool ending, but at the same time, just makes the audience ask even more questions. Which I guess that's what JJ wanted, I don't know. Either way, as you can see, I liked a lot about the movie, but at the same time had my numerous issues with it. And I'm sure the stuff I didn't like will eventually be explained later in the book or in the comic. But still, it should have really been answered in the movie itself, which again, in turn makes Rise of Skywalker a flawed but strangely enjoyable film nonetheless. Anyway, that's all the stuff I liked, didn't like, and hated about the movie. In turn, let me know what your good, bad, and the ugly in Rise of Skywalker was. And if you felt the same about any of the stuff I did, or just plain out disagreed with my opinions. Let me know and let's get a conversation going. And as always, be sure to like and share this video, as well to keep it here to Silo for everything on the latest in Star Wars. N7 from Silo, signing out.